Hilchos Mezuzah, Perek Chamishi. We're in the middle of the set of laws called Tefillin, Mezuzah, v'Sefer Torah. So the first 4 chapters were about Tefillin. Today and tomorrow, we're going to learn about the Mezuzah. This is an actual Mezuzah right here. It's a pretty small one. You can see it has 2 paragraphs. If you want, on the beautiful new screen that we got, you can now see the whole Mezuzah. Baruch Hashem, we were able to get a screen sponsored, so we'll be able to show now a lot more visuals for our learning. And that's what it is. It's 2 parshiyot, Shema and Vayayim Shamoah. On the other side, we have the name of Hashem, Shin Daled Yud, and also a little code, Kuzu b'muchsas kuzu. Talk about that, what that means in a minute. And this is what's on every single Jewish door. And for the next 2 days, we're going to be talking about the laws of the Mezuzah. Perek Chamishi, Halacha Aleph. Says the Rambam, Ketzad kotvim et ha-mezuzah. How do we write the Mezuzah? Kotvin shtei parashiyot. We write 2 portions of the Torah, Shema v'Hayayim Shamoah, al daf echad b'yiri'ah achat. It means in 1 column on 1 piece of parchment. This is how it is. 1 piece of parchment, and it's 1 column. Ve'osel arevach milamata v'revach milamala, and you make a space on bottom and on space on top, kemo chatzit tziporem, like the half of a nail. I guess a nail size, about a half of a nail size. And that's how much space we have, kind of a small margin on the Mezuzah. If you wrote it on 2 or 3 columns, that's also okay. If someone wanted to, experiment with his Mezuzah writing skills and he wanted to fit 1 column, a 2nd column, a 3rd, no problem. You cannot make it like a tail. That's a tail, right there. See, wide on top and narrow on the bottom. Okemo igul, or round, that's a circle mezuzah. See? So it's narrow on top, narrow on bottom, and it's kind of wide in the center. Okekuba, or like a tent, which is the other way around. Narrow on top and wide on bottom. If you made it like any one of those shapes, psula. It's actually a disqualified mezuzah. You can't practice your artistic designs on the mezuzah. You have to write it the way it is, square, in 1 column. Katva shalo ala seder. What if you wrote it not in order? Kegon shehikdim parsha leparsha. Instead of putting Shema first and then V'hayayim Shamoah, you put V'hayayim Shamoah before Shema. Or some commentaries even say you wrote. It looks the same, but you wrote it first V'hayayim Shamoah and then you wrote Shema. Psula. That's also disqualified. Katva bishnei orot. If you wrote it on 2 pieces of parchment, afal pisha tafran. Even if you sewed them up afterwards, so they're now 1 piece, psula, also disqualified. Instead, they have to be just like we saw in the beginning, the beautiful scroll of the Mezuzah. Sefer Torah Shabala, Utfilin Shabalu. What happens if you have, interesting question, you have a Torah scroll that got worn out, or Tefillin that got worn out. Now, part of a Torah scroll is the portions of Shema and Vayayim Shamoah. Part of Tefillin is also Shema and Vayayim Shamoah. So you say, you know what? I don't have the money to buy a Mezuzah. I'm going to take my old Torah scroll, and I'm going to use the portions of Shema and Vayayim Shamoah, put it into my Mezuzah, or I'm going to take my old Tefillin, and I'm going to put it into my Mezuzah. So, says the Rambam, Ein osin mehen mezuzah. You cannot make a mezuzah from worn out Torah scrolls and tefillin. V'lo min hagilyonim shel sefer Torah. Ein kotvin alav mezuzah. Even from the margins of a Torah scroll. Here, there's a very small margin. Tiny little margin, top and bottom. You look in the Torah scroll, there's quite some space between the bottom of each column and the bottom and the top. Technically, if the Torah scroll wears out, you can cut out the margins of the Torah and write a mezuzah on them. No. You can't take the margins of a Torah scroll and make a mezuzah out of them. Lefisha en moridin mikdusha chamura likdusha kala. Because you cannot lower something from a higher level of holiness to a lower level of holiness. If the margins were part of a Sefer Torah, even if there's nothing written on them, but they're part of the scroll, so they're holy. You can't make them into a mezuzah. Says the Rambam now, halacha bet umitzvah la'asot revach sheben parshat shema levahayim shamoah parasha stuma. It's a mitzvah to make the space between Shema and Vayayim Shamoah a closed portion. Talked a little bit about this the other day. On Sunday, we're going to get a lot more about exactly how this works. But in the Torah scroll, and you can see it up over there, there's always a space between 2 portions. If the space simply ends at the end of a line, and the next one begins at the beginning of the line, that's called Parsha Ptucha. It's an open portion. The space is open to the air. But if the next portion begins in the middle of the line, so now this space over here is considered to be closed. It's closed in. That's a parasha stuma. So v'hayayim shamoa, the mitzvah is to make it parshas tumah, to make it close, not to begin the next portion at the beginning of the line, but to begin it in the middle of the line like you have over here, and like all mezuzahs indeed have. So now this ear space is considered to be closed. It's parshas tumah. Want to see it? V'im asa'ota ptucha, if you made it open, in other words, you ended the Shema on the open line, and then you began v'hayayim shamoa on the next line in the beginning, kshera, then it's kosher. It's still kosher. Lefisha enas muchala min Torah. Technically, if you look at the Torah scroll, Shema and V'hayayim Shamoa don't follow one after the other. They're in two different parshiyot. So it's not really like one goes after the other. So you can make whatever kind of space you want after the fact. Initially, though, you should make it closed. Also, v'tzarich liyizaher batagin sheba. You have to be very careful about the crowns, the special crowns that you put into the mezuzah. The other day we spoke about how there are 7 letters that always get a crown. Shatnez Gatz, Shin Ayin Tet, Nun Zayin, Gimel Tzadik, always have crowns. But on the mezuzah, like on the tefillin, there are special letters that have crowns, and I highlighted them in blue over here. So I'm not sure if you can see so clearly, but those are the letters that have the crown. Says the Rambam gives us the list. The Elohein HaTagin She'osin B'Mezuzah. These are the crowns that we make in the mezuzah. Halacha Gimel Parshari Shona Yesh Ba Sheva Otiyot. The first portion of Shema has 7 letters with crowns. Al Kol Ot Mehen Shlosha Zeinin. On every letter you put 3 zayins, 3 little mini zayins, 3 little crowns. The Eluhein, and these they are. Shin Ayin Shel Shema. The Shin and the Ayin of the word Shema. By the way, the Ayin you can see is also bigger than the other letters. Shin Ayin of Shema. V'Nun de Nafshecha. Maybe I can use a little arrow here. Shkoyach. The nun of the nafshecha on top of it has 3 crowns. Now, the nun would anyway have crowns because it's one of the letters of Shatnez Gatz. But even if you don't put crowns on those letters, you still put a crown on this nun. Utrei zeinin shel mezuzot. The 2 zayins of the word mezuzot. Utrei tetin shel totafot. And the 2 tesses of totafot. Over here, this totafot, and this is mezuzot. The Rambam puts mezuzah before totafot, even though in the portion the totafot comes first, I think because we're in the laws of mezuzah. So he gives precedence to the mezuzah. But the point is, all these 7 letters in this first portion, they get crowns. And now, Parasha Shniya Yesh Ba Shesh Otiyot. The second portion by V'hayayim Shamoa has 6 letters with crowns. Al Kol Ot Mehen Shlosha Zeinin. Again, on each letter, there are 3 little crowns, 3 zayins. The Elohein, and they are the following. Gimel Shel Deganecha. That's over there on the 4th line there. The Gimel of Deganecha has a crown. Again, in today's mezuzah, they anyways have a crown because Shatnez Gatz, the Gimel is one of the letters that has crowns. But even if you don't, you have to put a crown on the Gimel. For example, there's only one Gimel in the mezuzah, every Rambam says. It's the only Gimel, so there's nothing to compare it to. Utrei zeinin shel mezuzot, utrei tetin shel totafot. And again, the same 2, the 2 of mezuzah, mezuzot, and the 2 tet of totafot. V'tzadik shel haaretz. And the final letter in the mezuzah, the final tzadik of the word haaretz, also has a crown, all the way there on the bottom. V'im lo asat tagin, if you didn't make the crowns, or you added or took away some crowns, you decided to make whatever crowns you wanted, lo pasal, you have not disqualified it, it's fine. V'im katva shelo b'sirtut. But if you didn't write it with ruled lines, the other day I showed you that piece of parchment that had the lines across it, with a stylus or an awl. You make lines across it, and you have to write on the ruled lines. Over here, they're kind of faded, if you want to see. You can see, check closely, you can see the ruled lines. So if you didn't put it with lines, or you weren't exact about which letters were written in the full form, with a vav or with a yud, and which ones didn't have a vav and a yud, which the Rambam gave us the list already in Hilchot Tefillin. It's the same maleh and chaser for a mezuzah. Want to see it? Sure. Or you added inside the mezuzah, even one letter, harezu psula, that's disqualified. Says the Rambam now, that's all about the inside of the mezuzah. What about the back side of the mezuzah? Minhag pashut. And here we have a picture of it, but you can see it on the actual scroll there. Minhag pashut, it's a common custom, shekotvim al ha-mezuzah, mi bachutz, that we write on the mezuzah on the outside, kineged harevach, sheben parsha leparsha, directly opposite the space, which is empty. You can see over there, before V'hayayim Shamoa begins, that's where we put the word of Shaddai. Shakai, it's one of Hashem's names. The In Bazeh have said, it doesn't cause any loss to the mezuzah, l'fishu mi bachutz, because it's on the outside. The Rambam doesn't mention it, but we write, as I showed you before, on the back of the mezuzah, kuzu, b'muchsaz kuzu. What do these random letters mean? Check this out. On the Shema, we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. If you take the letter that's after each of these letters, this code comes out. See, the letter after Yud is Chaf. The letter after Hey is Vav. The letter after Vav is Zayin. The letter after Hey is Vav again. That's Kuzu. Then for the same thing for Elokeinu, you follow the same code. You take the letter after it, and then it spells B'muchsaz. And so you actually write it right behind the words. Here's Hashem Elokeinu Hashem, and right behind it, I know it says in the Zohar, I'm not sure what the reasoning exactly for it is. The Zohar says it's Shema Razag Gelifa, it's the secret of the engraving. When you write this, Hashem used this name in creating the world. But maybe Rabbi Teitelbaum can enlighten us, I have no idea. Is there a reason why we put the name?
It's away the bad energy.
Oh, it's okay. So it's part of the shmirah. Because the mezuzah is there to guard. Part of it is to guard our houses, so it pushes away some of the bad stuff.
Some in the Sephardic custom don't.
They don't put it. So you won't see it every. The Rambam doesn't mention it either. It comes from the Ramah. The Ramah, who's Ashkenazi, he writes to put it on.
How does he get those? I mean, so like
Come from
Every
the
letter after
Ramah.
Yud,
Rabbi Moshe Isserles. If you follow, basically, yeah.
so the
Which letter?
Aleph, there's a alphabet you're talking about. The Aleph,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Aleph comes in back.
Exactly.
So every letter after each of the top letters,
Right.
they get these words kuzu.
B'muchsaz kuzu.
Does it have a meaning in Hebrew? Those words. Kuzu?
Those words don't have a meaning.
There's such a word called kuzu in Hebrew.
Nah. B'muchsaz, I have no idea.
Muktzah.
No, muktzah, that's something else. I don't know.
Wait, so sorry. So it's the letter after the yud.
You basically take these letters, and then you put the next letter in the Hebrew alphabet instead of them.
Oh, I see.
It's like a code.
Yud, you have Kaf.
So after Aleph comes Bet, after Lamed comes Mem, after Hey comes Vav, after Yud comes Chaf. You understand what I'm saying?
This is a cyber thing, encrypted.
Exactly. Right, there we go. It's an encrypted name
It's
of...
cryptic. Well, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
There's a cipher.
But hold on a second. On the back of the Mezuzah, you don't
It's not a bad idea to
Huh?
start
see
writing
those
like
words
that.
on the back of the
Yeah, check it out, right here.
You just said not all of them have it.
This is it. It's right there. It's written upside down
You don't
Be-
usually see the open mezuzah.
behind the letters.
So it's like
See it
Ashkenazi.
roll. When it's rolled, you don't see it.
That's right.
But where's the shin?
Shin Daled Yud is over here.
And not everyone does.
This you do see typically, if you have a clear case. If you don't have a clear case,
Shin down on the back.
no, that's
It's not kosher. Then.
not so kosher.
Maybe it's covered.
Trying to save ink or something.
It ends up being covered.
If the parchment's long enough. Or like some people put a mezuzah in a covered case, then you can't see it.
No, it's a see-through case.
All right, anyway, the bottom line is the Rambam only mentions to write the name of Shin Daled Yud, but we also write this Kabbalistic code. The Ein Bazeh have said, again, the bottom line is there's no problem with it, because it's on the outside. Aval elu shekotvin mibifnim. But if there are those, says the Rambam, that do write on the inside, Shmot HaMalachim, or Shemot Kedoshim, or Pasuk, or Chotamot, they write names of angels, or holy names of God, or as different verses, or different signatures. Harei hein bichlal mi she'en lahem chelek la'olam haba. These people have no portion in the world to come. She'elu hatipshim. Because these fools, lo dai lahem, shebitlu ha-mitzvah, not only have they canceled the mitzvah, because when you write extra letters inside the mezuzah, it becomes disqualified, ela sha'asu, mitzvah gdola. They're making this huge mitzvah, shehi yichud Hashem shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu va'avato va'avodato, which is the unity of Hashem's name, love to Hashem, serving Hashem. They're taking this and they're making it ki'ilu hu kamea shel hanayat atzman, as if it's some kind of amulet that's going to give them pleasure, as they do think in their foolish minds, that it helps you in the vanities of the world. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't think that a mezuzah is a guard, is a shmirah. Of course it is. A mezuzah is meant to guard our homes. One of the reasons we write Shin Daled Yud is because it stands for Shomer, Daltot, or Dirot Yisrael. Hashem guards the doors of the dwelling places of Israel. The thing is that the only reason a mezuzah guards us is because it's a mitzvah. The second you start writing your own names and your own signatures in the mezuzah, what you're saying is, I don't believe that a mezuzah guards on account of being a mitzvah. I believe it guards on account of the hocus pocus that I write inside it. That's foolish. To take it away from its original intent of being a mitzvah, that removes you from the world to come. It's pretty severe stuff over here. But if you have a real mezuzah and you put it up on your door, then of course it serves as a guardian, as a protection for the house. Halacha hey, umitzvah lichtov al haaretz b'shita acharona. You can see over here, we'll go back to the first page. The words al haaretz, the final two words, the mitzvah is to write them on the last line, bein berosh, bein be'emtza hashita. Whether in the middle, in the beginning or in the middle, or some texts have besof. the end of the line. But it's got to be on its own on the bottom line. Today we write it in the beginning. V'nahagu kol hasofrim. All scribes have the custom lichtov ota b'shtayim ve'esrim shitot, to write the mezuzah on 22 lines. The al haaretz berosh shita acharona. And the words al haaretz are on the head, the beginning of the last line. The elohen haotiyot sheberosh kol shita v'shita al haseder. And the following are the letters, the words, I guess, that should be at the beginning of every single line. In other words, it's 22 lines, but there's also a certain amount of words that go on each line. And so here are the following words that begin the lines, and you can follow along in the mezuzah here. You'll see it's literally the same since the Rambam till today. Shema is the first line. Hashem is the beginning of the second line. Hadvarim is the third line. Levanecha is the fourth line. Uveshachbecha is number 5. Bain is number 6. Vehaya, that's the second portion, is number 7. Mitzaveh is number 8. Bechol is number 9. Yoreh is number 10. Esev is number 11. Pen, number 12. V'hishtach is 13. Hashamayim is 14. V'avadatem is 15. V'samtem, 16. Otam is 17. The other otam is 18. Baderech is 19. Uvisharecha is 20. Asher is 21. And Al Haaretz is the beginning, and it's the whole 22nd line of the mezuzah. So it's just the Hebrew words telling you where to begin the lines. Halacha vav. Kishakoflim ota. When we roll up the mezuzah, like the tefillin, gololin otam misofa shita v'tchilata. We roll it from the end of the line to the beginning, ad shetimtza, till it turns out shekish-yiftach hakorei likro, that if a reader will open up the portion to read it, yikra meirosh hashita l'sofa, he'll be able to read from the beginning to the end. Va'achar shegolola, after you roll it up, manicha bishfoferet, you have to put it into a little tube, shel kaneh or shel etz or shel kol davar, either reed or wood or anything. Today people use plastic or beautiful, ornamental cases that people have come to think is the mezuzah itself. They forget there's the scroll inside. But you put it into a tube. Umechaber el mezuzat hapetach b'masmer, and you must attach it to the doorpost of a door with a nail. It doesn't have to be a nail. Bottom line, it has to be attached. O chofer b'mezuzat hapetach umachnis ba mezuzah. Or, like you see in Israel, many people still have, and people do this till today, is you dig into the doorway and you actually put the mezuzah into the doorpost. Halacha zayin v'kodem sheik ba'ena, before you fasten it, before you set it into the wall, b'mezuzat hapetach, in the doorpost of the door, mevarech tchila, you first make a blessing, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kitchanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Hashem commanded us with the mitzvahs, and He gave us the mitzvah of likboa mezuzah. The mitzvah is to set in the mezuzah. Ve'eno mevarech b'shat ktivata. You don't make a blessing when you write it, even though in the Torah it says uchtavtam. You should write it on your doorposts. The mitzvah isn't the writing. The mitzvah is to have it written and then to put it up. Shekviyata zuhi mitzvah, because it's the setting, it's the affixing. That's the mitzvah. Halacha chet tla'a b'makel. If you hung it on a stick, and the commentaries explain what this means is you put it into a little stick, and instead of attaching it to the doorpost, you just hung it on the doorpost, or you kind of leaned it on the doorpost. So it's in the right place, but it's not attached. Psula. That's disqualified. She'en zu kvua, because that's not considered fixed. It has to be fixed in the doorway. Hinicha acharei delet, if you put it behind the door, not in the doorpost, lo asa klum, you have not done anything. But notice he doesn't say psula, doesn't say it's disqualified. So the commentaries say that if you need to guard it from thieves, then you can actually put it on the inside. Or if the doorpost is too thin, as you go into a kosher restaurant, so you see like the doorway is kind of like a swinging door, so there's no room on the doorpost, so they actually allow to put it on the inside, in the back of the door. If you go to, I think La Brea Bagel has it in La Brea.
What about this one? Cyberger?
Do they have it like that?
I forget. I think theirs is like a little weird.
Yeah.
So they have like the thin glass thing.
Also on Toast Cafe, they have a thin glass thing, so you can't put the mezuzah on the doorpost, so they have it.
Exactly.
So, but ideally, again, you got to put it on the thickness of the doorpost. Chafar b'mezuzat hapetach. If you dug in to the doorpost of the door, v'yichnis hamezuzah kemo neger, and you put the mezuzah in like a crossbar, v'hi kibriach hakrashim batabaot, like the pole in the Mishkan, the tabernacle that went through the rings. Basically, it means horizontally. Psula. The Rambam holds that a horizontal mezuzah is pasul, and you have to put it up vertically. That's the Sephardi opinion. Put it up directly straight. Rabbeinu Tam was famous for writing that, no, the opposite is true. You should put the mezuzah horizontally, and that's why today, what do? We put it diagonally. We make a compromise. Not straight, not this way, we put it diagonal. He'emikla tefach. If you put it too deep in the doorway, 1 tefach, about 4 inches into the door, that's psula. It has to be on the doorpost, not all the way in. It's disqualified. Chatach kaneh v'hichnis bo mezuzah. Check this picture out. I have actually found something on Google about this. This is a door that's made totally out of reeds. Okay, there is no structure to this. It's just reeds. Now, let's say a guy takes a reed, one of these reeds, chatach kaneh, he cuts a reed, v'hichnis bo mezuzah, and you put a mezuzah into the reed. V'achar kach chiber hakaneh el kanim acherim, and then from this reed, he begins to build his reed door. And he's attaching it to other reeds, and before you know it, v'ha'amid min hakol, mezuzat petach. He puts on from everything a doorpost. So he began with the mezuzah, and then he created the doorpost around it. Like this. That would be psula. That's disqualified. Because the affixing of the mezuzah came before the doorway. You have to have a doorway, and then you put on the mezuzah. It's like, it says by tzitzit, ta'aseh. You have to make the tzitzit. V'lo min he'asu. It can't be already made. So in the same way the Gemara learns, applies to the mezuzah. You can't have a mezuzah standing there and all of a sudden you make a door around it. You have to have a door and then put up the mezuzah. Halakha tet, mezuzat hayachid nivdeket pa'amayim b'shavua. A mezuzah that belongs to an individual is checked twice in a shavua. And a shavua means week in modern Hebrew. It doesn't mean twice a week. Shavua also means every 7 years. Every shmita. So twice every 7 years, you have to check your individual mezuzahs. Mezuzat rabim, if it's a mezuzah of the public, like in a shul or something like that, pa'amayim bayovel. You only have to check it twice every 50 years. Shema nikra'a mimenu otachat or nimchaka. Maybe a letter got ripped or it got erased because it's it's affixed to the wall. Markevet, it could get moldy and it can get ruined. Today, it says we use different kinds of materials, different inks. So you have to be much more careful to check the mezuzahs. Like tefillin, the ideal way is to check it even once a year, if you can. During the month of Elul, when we check our tefillin, so we also check our mezuzahs. And it's brought down in the holy books that if something bad happens in your family or to a person, it should be a sign to check the mezuzah. The Rebbe would always say, people had problems, check the mezuzah. Just today, this morning, there's a story going around about a rabbi who had a congregant who had a very big difficulty in his eye 2 weeks ago. Literally happened just now. 2 weeks ago, got very sick in his right eye, stopped being able to see. He went to the doctor. They found this blood clot behind his eye. They couldn't really operate. So he did some tests, told him to come back. Last Thursday, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, a week ago, he heard about this segula of checking a mezuzah when something bad happens to you. He just bought his mezuzahs just now. They're all new from Israel, fancy mezuzahs. And he gave them into a sofer. And right over here, by the word ben enechem, so it has 2 yuds. His mezuzah didn't have a yud, second yud, just enchem, 1 eye, not 2. And he fixed it on the day. Shabbat, he came to shul. He was able to see. He went to the doctor just now, 2 days ago. The guy couldn't believe it. Israel. Hamechtav mistovev achshav, by WhatsApp. You can go all over the place. They're sending it all around. Anyway, you check the mezuzahs, and they're a very big segula. Halacha yud, hakol chayavin b'mezuzah. Everybody is obligated to have a mezuzah. Afilu nashim va'avadim. It's not a time-bound mitzvah. You have a home, you have to get a mezuzah. Even women or slaves. Umechanchim et haktanim la'asot mezuzah levatehem. We even educate young children to make a mezuzah on their homes if they have a little room where they would stay. Hasocher bayit b'chutz ha'aretz. If you rent a house outside of Israel, v'hadar b'pundak b'eretz Yisrael, or even if you live in a hotel, but you're in Israel, patur min ha'mezuzah shloshim yom. You're exempt from mezuzah for 30 days. After 30 days, you're obligated. Aval hasocher bayit b'eretz Yisrael. But if you rent a house in Israel, chayav b'mezuzah miyad. You're immediately obligated to put up a mezuzah because it's something special about living in Israel. The moment you rent a house there, you're obligated in a mezuzah. Today, when you rent a new apartment here, let's say in LA, so you can't make a blessing before 30 days. Still, you want to have a mezuzah, so you put up a mezuzah right away in the front door, let's say, without a blessing. Then after 30 days passes, you take that one down, you put up another one in place, and you move that one to another room or something, and you make a blessing after 30 days.
My daughter's moving out of her apartment.
And she has mezuzahs?
She has a mezuzah on the front door, which I put up.
Mm-hmm.
Her roommate is also Jewish, and she's staying.
Will she take care of it with respect?
I mean, I have no idea, but I
Sure,
want to
leave
take
it.
that one and put it onto her. She's moving into her own place.
Mm.
No, you have to be careful.
You have to be careful with that?
So what happens if I replace it with another mezuzah, the one that's in there? I like that one, the scroll.
Yeah, if you put them in mezuzah, it's fine.
If you put up a mezuzah, it's fine. There you go. You get the ruling.
What happens if a goy moves in? Can you tell? I mean,
No, then you should
can
take it, I think.
or can you leave it?
You should take
Or
it.
you should.
You should take it, because he's not going
If you
to...
don't know who's moving in,
Or if you don't know who's moving in.
you take it, but most people are not Jewish.
But if you know for sure
If you
Jews
know
moving,
it's a Jew is moving in, you should leave the mezuzah or organize something.
Right.
Wait. So if he's Jewish, you should leave it,
Yeah.
even if it's like extra muhudar and you want to take it with you. And
Change it.
you could charge them for it though.
Change it.
That's what-
You need to leave them on mezuzah, yeah.
oh wow.
Can you charge
Okay.
them for it?
I think, yeah. But you're
What if
just-
it's
you're supposed
what if it's a
to-
Jewish
it's a
landlord?
big deal, right? You're like really not supposed to like take off.
No, I mean,
They
I
get
would
charged.
want to use their own mezuzah and then you dip them.
Well, if they want to use it, yeah, then I imagine it's fine, right? If they have their own mezuzahs, do you have to leave one for them?
No, if they're bringing their own mezuzahs, you make an official arrangement, you're going to put up a mezuzah, fine.
Uh huh.
There is
All right.
nothing about leaving it for Jews that are moving in.
There's something about leaving it for Jews. You hear it? Something about leaving it for Jews.
Yeah. Be
Oh.
careful about it.
Okay.
The mistake everyone makes for houses is
I
that
was
they
scared
think
you're
30
not ever
days.
taking it off yet.
What?
They don't realize that 30 days is only when you're renting, but when you're buying, you need to put it right away. When you're buying a house, and you put a lot of this, you need to put it right away.
Uh huh. You hear that?
And with the brother.
Many people
Yeah, you
make
buy
a
it, you put
mistake
it right
thinking
away,
that
but
there's
if you're
30
As
days.
soon as you buy a house, that's.
Have to put.
What if you haven't moved in yet?
When you start putting in furniture, whatever, that's already a little bit of a
If you fix the house,
to
you
figure out.
will
When it's chayiv.
Huh? When you're
Figuring out
living.
it's
When
chayiv.
you're living
Start
there.
putting in furniture, it's like whatever.
Uh huh.
But you can at least put on the front door right away.
If you're renting,
No, right.
you're chayiv, you're obligated to put on all the doors.
Before you move in.
When you move in,
When you move in. When you move in.
Halacha
Yud Aleph.
That's already done.
Huh? Right. Halacha Yud Aleph. Hamaskir bayit lachaviro. If you rent a house to a friend, you're the landlord, he's renting, he's the tenant. Al hasocher lahavi mezuzah v'likboa ota. The renter, the tenant, has to bring the mezuzah and put it up. Afilu haya noten schar al kviyata. Even if he's paying rent just for the right to affix the mezuzah. Mipnei shehamezuzah chovat hadarhi. Very important principle. The mezuzah is the obligation of the person living there. Ve'eina chovat habayit. It's not the obligation of the house. Not that the house needs a mezuzah, you need a mezuzah on your house. So if you're living there, you have to put it up. Ukeshehu yotzei. Oh, here we go. When you leave the house, lo yitlena biyado v'yetzei. That's right in the Rambam. You shouldn't take it out with you and leave. V'im haya habayit shel kuti. But if the house belonged to a goy, hareza notla k'sheyetzei. You should take it when you go out because you may not treat it with respect. That's Rabbi Talibam was saying that if you're renting a house and the Jew is staying after you, you should actually leave the mezuzah there. Make arrangements somehow. Maybe they'll bring their own mezuzah, but the bottom line is you have to leave it for that. But if you don't know who's coming in, or if you know it's a guy coming in, then you certainly take it off with you and you take your mezuzahs to your next home.